Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe, filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. The show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable, suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time, with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, Later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog. Welcome to tonight's Family Guy Deep Dive, where we explore the shadowy corners of Quahog and uncover the forgotten characters who made their mark in just one episode. Tonight, we're diving into the twisted tales of temporary troublemakers, fleeting friends, and memorable menaces that crossed paths with the Griffin family only once, but left lasting impressions on fans everywhere. Family Guy has given us over 400 episodes across more than 2 decades, and while we all know and love the core cast, some of the most fascinating characters are the ones who appeared for just 22 minutes and then vanished into television history. These aren't your typical throwaway gags or background extras. These are fully realized characters with their own motivations, quirks, and sometimes terrifying agendas that make you wonder what might have happened if they'd stuck around longer. What makes these one-time appearances so captivating is how they often serve as dark mirrors to our beloved main characters. They show us alternate versions of what Stewie, Brian, or Peter might become under different circumstances. Or they reveal hidden aspects of the Griffins we never knew existed. Some arrive as allies who become enemies, others start as threats and become unlikely saviors, and a few manage to be both simultaneously. Let's start with one of the most memorable antagonists in Family Guy history. Evil Stewie, the malevolent clone who emerged from Stewie's desperate attempt to reclaim his villainous edge. In The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair, we witness Stewie grappling with an identity crisis that many long-running animated characters face. After years of character development, the once murderous baby genius had become, well, less murderous and arguably less of a genius when it came to world domination schemes. The episode begins with Stewie getting humiliated in the sandbox by a bigger kid, a scenario that would have once triggered an elaborate revenge plot involving death, raise, and world conquest. Instead, modern Stewie just wants to handle things like a gentleman, building a rifle with care and precision while humming to himself. It's almost endearing how methodical he's become, even in his attempts at intimidation. But Brian makes an astute observation about how Stewie has lost his edge over the years, no longer using phrases like "damn you" or actively trying to blow things up. This criticism cuts deep because it forces Stewie to confront how much he's changed. In response, he constructs what he calls a concentrated neural enhancement device, designed to artificially boost his evil side back to its former glory. The machine itself is a testament to Stewie's continued brilliance, even if his applications have become less sinister. But like many of Stewie's inventions, it works in an unexpected way. Rather than simply making Stewie more evil, the device extracts all of his malevolent impulses and creates a separate entity, Evil Stewie, or EATS. As he's temporarily dubbed, represents everything that original Stewie used to be, amplified to terrifying degrees. Where original Stewie once had moments of humanity that tempered his cruelty, Evil Stewie is pure malice without any redeeming qualities whatsoever. The visual design of Evil Stewie is particularly clever, using a simple color palette swap to create an immediate sense of wrongness. He looks like Stewie, but wrong, like looking at a photographed negative. This design choice reinforces the idea that he's not just another character, but specifically the dark reflection of our familiar baby genius. Evil Stewie's first acts involve tormenting Brian in ways that are both creative and genuinely disturbing. He doesn't just attack physically, he psychologically manipulates situations to cause maximum distress. When he bites Brian's tail, It's not just violence for violence's sake. It's calculated cruelty designed to establish dominance and create fear. The way he casually discusses what dog tail tastes like while Brian writhes in pain shows a level of detached sadism that goes beyond anything original Stewie ever displayed. The rampage that follows showcases evil Stewie's complete lack of moral restraints. He attacks the Kool-Aid Man, an act that's simultaneously absurd and horrifying. The Kool-Aid Man has been bursting through walls for decades, causing property damage wherever he goes, yet no one ever held him accountable. Evil Stewie's assault on this beloved advertising mascot serves as both dark comedy and a commentary on how we accept destructive behavior when it's familiar and cheerful. What makes Evil Stewie truly terrifying isn't just his actions, but his intelligence. He retains all of Stewie's tactical brilliance while abandoning any moral framework that might limit his choices. When Stewie and Brian attempt to trap him at the park, Evil Stewie immediately recognizes it as a setup and turns the situation to his advantage. His comment about it being a gift reveals how he views every encounter as an opportunity for sadism rather than genuine conflict. The fight scene between the two Stewies becomes almost symbolic, representing the internal struggle between growth and regression that many people face. As they wrestle for control of the weapon, tearing each other's clothes in the process, it's impossible not to see this as a metaphor for psychological conflict made literal. Stewie is literally fighting his own worst impulses, given physical form and independent will. The resolution comes down to Brian having to choose between two identical figures, each claiming to be the real Stewie. This scenario has become a trope in science fiction, but Family Guy handles it with characteristic cleverness. The solution isn't based on secret knowledge or hidden scars, but on something more fundamental: childlike wonder. Original Stewie's ability to find mystery and fascination in simple things like feet reveals the humanity that Evil Stewie lacks entirely. Brian's decision to shoot Evil Stewie is presented as heroic, but there's something deeply unsettling about watching someone destroy what amounts to a part of Stewie's personality. It raises questions about whether we truly want our favorite characters to grow and change, or whether we prefer them frozen in their most entertaining but potentially destructive forms. The episode's exploration of identity and personal growth resonates on multiple levels. Stewie's journey from would-be world conqueror to more domesticated baby genius mirrors the way many people abandon their youthful ambitions, sometimes wondering if they've lost something essential about themselves in the process. Evil Stewie represents the dangerous allure of regression, the temptation to return to simpler times when moral complexities didn't constrain our actions. Moving from Stewie's dark reflection to his genetic sibling, we encounter Boston Stewie in the appropriately titled Boston Stewie. This episode explores themes of family, abandonment, and cultural identity through the lens of Stewie discovering he has a half-brother created from one of Lois's donated eggs. The setup immediately raises questions about modern reproductive technology and the unexpected families it can create. Boston Stewie represents everything original Stewie might have become under different circumstances. Where our Stewie developed refined tastes and British sensibilities despite being raised in Rhode Island, Boston Stewie embodies every stereotype about Massachusetts residents turned up to 11. His first words establish him as crude, aggressive, and unapologetically confrontational, yet there's something endearing about his authenticity. The contrast between the two babies is immediately apparent and consistently hilarious. Original Stewie's sophisticated vocabulary and cultural references bounce off Boston Stewie's street-smart aggression and working-class sensibilities. When Boston Stewie sees Stewie's crazy straws and immediately identifies them as belonging to the fat man, it shows how quickly he sizes up social dynamics and hierarchies. Boston Stewie's backstory adds emotional depth to what could have been a simple comedy premise. His abandonment at an orphanage and subsequent lack of adoption speaks to real issues within the foster care system, while his defensive attitude masks genuine vulnerability. His aggression isn't just personality. It's armor developed to survive rejection and institutional neglect. The episode uses Boston Stewie to explore how environment shapes personality. Despite sharing genetic material with Stewie, his upbringing on Boston streets has created someone almost entirely different. His approach to conflict is direct and physical, while original Stewie prefers elaborate schemes and psychological manipulation. Yet both share intelligence and determination, suggesting that core traits persist regardless of circumstances. Stewie's attempt to civilize his brother for the adoption fair becomes a commentary on social expectations and conformity. The alphabet scene, where Boston Stewie turns every letter into profanity, illustrates how deeply ingrained his worldview has become. He's not just being difficult, he genuinely sees the world through a lens shaped by hardship and survival. The adoption fair sequence provides both humor and genuine pathos. Boston Stewie's passionate defense of the Patriots football team, even in an inappropriate setting, shows his loyalty and passion. These aren't negative traits, but they don't fit the sanitized image most adoptive parents seek. The tragedy isn't that Boston Stewie is unlovable, but that the system fails to recognize his positive qualities beneath his rough exterior. The resolution, with Boston Stewie finding a family of equally passionate Patriots fans, feels both satisfying and realistic. Rather than forcing him to change, the episode suggests that everyone deserves to find people who accept them as they are. The women who adopt him aren't trying to fix or improve him. They celebrate the same intense loyalty that made him seem unadoptable to others. Boston Stewie's single appearance raises intriguing questions about nature versus nurture while providing genuine laughs and unexpected emotional moments. His friendship with original Stewie, brief though it is, shows how family bonds can transcend cultural differences and personal circumstances. From sibling bonds to deadly pets, we encounter Sheldon, the murderous turtle, in Lois Comes Out of Her Shell. This episode takes the innocent concept of a child's first pet and transforms it into a psychological thriller that wouldn't be out of place in a horror movie. Sheldon represents the dark side of the human-animal bond, where affection becomes obsession and care becomes control. The episode begins with Stewie's accidental acquisition of Sheldon during a park visit with Lois. The turtle's first appearance is deliberately misleading, presenting him as a harmless, even pitiful creature. Stewie's immediate affection for the animal seems natural and healthy, representing his capacity for nurturing relationships with creatures smaller and more vulnerable than himself. However, subtle signs of Sheldon's malevolent nature begin appearing almost immediately. The disappearance of Robert's eye, initially dismissed as Brian's jealousy-driven destruction, marks the beginning of a pattern of escalating violence. The way the family rationalizes away these warning signs reflects how people often ignore red flags in relationships, preferring comfortable explanations to disturbing truths. Sheldon's methodology reveals a calculating intelligence that makes him genuinely frightening. He doesn't simply attack randomly. He orchestrates situations to maximize psychological impact while maintaining plausible deniability. The razor blade bookmark represents his ability to transform innocent objects into weapons, while the substitution of Brian's alcohol with flat diet soda shows his understanding of his victim's specific vulnerabilities. The bookshelf incident serves as the episode's turning point, where Sheldon's murderous intent becomes undeniable. Yet even then, Stewie struggles to accept the reality of his pet's nature. This reluctance to acknowledge the threat reflects how difficult it can be to abandon emotional investments, even when they become dangerous. Sheldon's final confrontation with Stewie transforms from pet relationship to genuine warfare. The turtle's ability to remove his shell, supposedly impossible in reality, emphasizes his supernatural level of hatred and determination. His naked appearance becomes genuinely disturbing, transforming him from cute pet to alien threat. The resolution, with Mario-style shell jumping, provides comic relief while acknowledging video game tropes about turtle enemies. Yet there's something unsettling about reducing Sheldon to a game reference, as if his genuine menace can only be defeated by treating him as fictional rather than real. Sheldon's characterization as pure malevolence without clear motivation makes him uniquely disturbing among Family Guy villains. Most antagonists have understandable goals or grievances, but Sheldon simply exists to cause suffering. This absence of rationality makes him more frightening than more elaborate villains with complex schemes. The episode uses Sheldon to explore themes of responsibility and the dangerous allure of exotic pets. Stewie's inability to control his chosen companion reflects real-world issues with people acquiring animals they can't properly manage. The turtle's transformation from beloved pet to mortal enemy serves as a cautionary tale about the unpredictability of wild creatures, no matter how domesticated they might appear. Moving from murderous pets to protective caregivers, we encounter Natalia in Nanny Goats. This episode flips expectations by presenting what initially appears to be a simple child care story and transforming it into an action thriller that showcases the lengths people will go to protect children, even those who aren't their own. Natalia's introduction immediately establishes her as different from typical Family Guy characters. Her thick Belarusian accent and matter-of-fact approach to childcare create an impression of competence mixed with cultural unfamiliarity. Her question about favorite breakfast fish and her bedtime story modifications hint at a background far more complex than typical domestic help. The revelation that Natalia is being hunted by mercenaries transforms the entire episode's dynamic. What seemed like cultural quirks suddenly become survival skills, and her unconventional childcare methods take on new meaning as protective measures. Her ability to instantly shift from caregiver to warrior suggests a depth of experience that goes far beyond typical nanny training. The action sequences that follow showcased Natalia's remarkable combat skills while maintaining focus on her protective instincts toward the Griffin children. She doesn't fight for glory or revenge. Every action is calculated to keep Stewie, Meg, and Chris safe from harm. Her willingness to use Stewie as a human shield sounds callous but reflects tactical thinking designed to maximize survival odds for all parties involved. Natalia's decision to have Stewie parachute to safety while she draws the mercenaries away demonstrates her strategic thinking and self-sacrifice. She's willing to face unknown dangers alone rather than risk the children's lives, showing how quickly she's bonded with her temporary charges. Her matter-of-fact delivery of survival instructions to a 1-year-old reflects both practical necessity and touching faith in Stewie's abilities. The episode never fully explains why Natalia is being hunted or what she did in Belarus to earn such dedicated enemies. This ambiguity makes her more intriguing while avoiding the need to justify or condemn her past actions. She exists in the present as someone willing to risk everything for innocent children, regardless of what brought her to that point. Natalia's abrupt departure at the episode's end feels both realistic and melancholy. She's too dangerous to remain with a normal family, yet her brief time with the Griffins revealed her capacity for genuine affection and care. Her final appearance, presumably still fighting off Belarusian hit squads, suggests a life of constant danger that makes normal relationships impossible. The character of Natalia raises questions about redemption and the possibility of escaping one's past. Her skills suggest a violent history, yet her interactions with the Griffin children reveal deep humanity and protective instincts. The episode presents her as heroic, without fully absolving her of whatever crimes led to her current situation. From international intrigue to domestic comedy, we encounter new Brian in The Man with Two Brians. This episode explores themes of aging, replacement, and the fear of becoming obsolete through the introduction of a younger, supposedly superior version of the Griffin family dog. New Brian's characterization as aggressively pleasant creates immediate unease. His constant positivity and eagerness to please feel artificial, like an artificial intelligence programmed to be likable rather than genuine personality traits. His offer to turn off Brian's alarm clock and wake him gently represents the kind of thoughtfulness that seems too good to be true. The episode uses new Brian to explore Brian's insecurities about aging and relevance. At 8 years old, Brian is indeed approaching senior status for a dog, and his lifestyle of drinking and smoking has likely accelerated the aging process. New Brian represents everything Brian used to be: energetic, optimistic, and eager to please the Griffin family. Peter's introduction of New Brian reveals his characteristic inability to handle emotional complexity. Rather than addressing Brian's aging directly, he attempts to soften the blow by providing a replacement before the original is gone. This approach reflects how people often avoid difficult conversations about mortality and change, preferring to present solutions rather than acknowledge problems. New Brian's interactions with the family members showcase his calculated appeal to each person's specific desires. He provides Meg with validation, offers Chris entertainment, and gives Lois the helpful companion she's always wanted. His success in winning over the family isn't based on genuine connection, but on his ability to be exactly what each person wants him to be. The contrast between New Brian's artificial perfection and original Brian's authentic flaws becomes the episode's central tension. Brian's jealousy is understandable, but also reveals his own shortcomings. He spent years taking the Griffin family for granted, assuming his position was secure regardless of his behavior or contributions. Brian's decision to leave the family rather than compete with New Brian shows both pride and genuine hurt. His departure isn't just about being replaced. It's about feeling unloved and unappreciated after years of loyalty. The family's lukewarm response to his leaving confirms his worst fears about his dispensability. New Brian's ultimate fate, being chopped up and disposed of by Stewie, provides dark comedy while removing the threat he represented. Yet there's something disturbing about how easily the family accepts his disappearance, suggesting that their affection for him was indeed as superficial as it appeared. The episode's resolution, with Brian's return to the family, feels somewhat unearned. The Griffins don't really change their behavior or acknowledge their treatment of Brian. They simply accept his return because New Brian is no longer available. This suggests that Brian's position in the family is secure mainly due to familiarity rather than genuine appreciation. New Brian serves as a commentary on how people often claim to want perfection, but ultimately prefer familiarity and authenticity. His artificial pleasantness becomes tiresome precisely because it lacks the genuine flaws and complexities that make relationships meaningful. From replacement pets to family secrets, we encounter Karen, Peter's wrestling sister, in Peter's Sister. This episode explores sibling rivalry, childhood trauma, and the long-term effects of bullying through the lens of Peter's complicated relationship with his professional wrestler sister. Karen's introduction immediately establishes her as a physical threat to Peter. Her casual violence toward him during their reunion isn't playful sibling roughhousing, but genuine aggression that has persisted into adulthood. Her ability to dominate Peter physically and psychologically reveals dynamics that likely began in childhood and never resolved. The episode uses Karen to explore how childhood bullying can shape adult relationships and self-perception. Peter's fear of his sister isn't just about physical pain. It's about returning to a powerless state he thought he'd escaped. Karen's presence reduces him to the helpless child he once was, unable to assert himself or demand respect. Karen's professional wrestling career adds another layer to her characterization. Her success in a traditionally male-dominated field suggests competence and determination. Yet her inability to separate professional aggression from family relationships reveals emotional immaturity. She applies wrestling mentality to every interaction, treating family gatherings like competitive matches. The family's reaction to Karen reveals how people often enable bullying behavior by treating it as harmless fun. Lois's dismissal of Peter's concerns and the children's entertainment at his expense show how victims of family bullying often receive little support from other relatives. The normalization of Karen's violence toward Peter reflects broader social tendencies to minimize sibling abuse. Peter's decision to confront Karen in a wrestling ring provides both literal and metaphorical resolution to their conflict. By meeting her on her own terms, he forces her to acknowledge him as an equal rather than a victim. The physical confrontation becomes necessary because Karen only understands and respects force. The fight sequence between Peter and Karen allows both characters to express years of accumulated resentment and pain. Peter's ability to hold his own against a professional wrestler feels unrealistic, but symbolically important. He needed to prove to himself and Karen that he's no longer the helpless child she once tormented. Karen's eventual recognition of Peter as worthy of respect comes only after he demonstrates his willingness to fight back. This resolution suggests that some bullies only understand strength and will, continue their behavior until confronted with consequences. However, it also raises questions about whether violence is truly necessary for such resolutions. The episode's connection between Peter's treatment of Meg and his own experiences with Karen provides psychological insight into cycles of abuse. Peter's acknowledgement that he's been projecting his own victimization onto Meg shows rare self-awareness and suggests the possibility of breaking destructive patterns. Karen's characterization as both villain and victim reflects the complexity of family relationships. Her aggression toward Peter likely stems from her own childhood experiences and the competitive environment that shaped her personality. The episode avoids simple moral judgments, presenting her as flawed, but not irredeemably evil. Finally, we encounter Pearl Burton in And I'm Joyce Kinney, where Brian discovers love with an elderly woman who represents everything he thought he didn't want in a romantic partner. This episode explores themes of prejudice, unexpected connection, and the transformative power of genuine compatibility. Pearl's initial presentation as a bitter, hostile elderly woman creates strong first impressions that Brian must overcome. Her use of delousing powder and harsh criticisms of everything around her make her seem like a stereotypical curmudgeon. Yet these defensive behaviors mask deep hurt and decades of disappointment. The revelation of Pearl's past as a famous jingle singer adds depth to her character while explaining her current isolation. Her failed attempt to transition from commercial music to opera represents dreams deferred and artistic ambitions crushed by industry prejudice. Her retreat from public life becomes understandable as self-protection rather than antisocial behavior. Brian's initial revulsion toward Pearl reflects his own shallow priorities and ageist assumptions. His preference for young, attractive partners has consistently led to unsatisfying relationships, yet he continues pursuing the same type of woman. Pearl forces him to confront whether his romantic failures stem from choosing partners based on superficial criteria. The development of Brian and Pearl's relationship demonstrates how genuine compatibility transcends physical attraction and age differences. Their shared love of literature, music, and intellectual conversation creates a connection Brian has never experienced with his typical romantic interests. Pearl appreciates Brian's intelligence and creativity rather than simply tolerating his pretensions. Pearl's reluctance to leave her house reflects the way long-term isolation can become self-perpetuating. Her fear of the outside world has kept her safe from further disappointment, but also prevented her from experiencing joy or connection. Brian's encouragement represents both opportunity and risk for someone who has been hurt by public rejection. The musical sequence where Brian educates Pearl about changes in the modern world serves multiple purposes. It showcases Seth MacFarlane's vocal talents while demonstrating Brian's genuine desire to share experiences with Pearl. The song becomes an act of love, helping her reconnect with a world she's avoided for decades. Pearl's death shortly after their day together provides both tragedy and fulfillment. While their time together is brief, it represents the kind of meaningful connection that can justify years of loneliness. Her assertion that this was the best day of her life gives weight to their relationship despite its brevity. The virtual reality sequence at Pearl's deathbed offers both technological marvel and emotional authenticity. Rather than simply accepting death, they create a shared fantasy that allows them to experience the lifetime together they'll never have in reality. This sequence suggests that love can transcend physical limitations and temporal constraints. Pearl's impact on Brian extends beyond their romantic connection to challenge his fundamental assumptions about relationships and compatibility. She represents the possibility of finding love based on intellectual and emotional connection rather than physical attraction or social status. Yet Brian's return to his previous dating patterns after her death suggests how difficult it can be to maintain such insights without ongoing reinforcement. These one-off characters each serve specific narrative functions while creating memorable impressions that linger long after their episodes end. Evil Stewie forces Stewie to confront his own moral evolution, while Boston Stewie explores nature versus nurture through genetic similarity and cultural differences. Sheldon transforms pet ownership into psychological horror, while Natalia reveals heroism in unexpected places. New Brian challenges assumptions about improvement and replacement, while Karen forces Peter to confront his own capacity for bullying. Pearl demonstrates that love can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances when people connect on deeper levels than physical attraction or social compatibility. What makes these characters particularly effective is their ability to reveal hidden aspects of the main characters. Through temporary relationships and conflicts, we see sides of Stewie, Brian, and Peter that regular episodes might never explore. Evil Stewie shows us what Stewie might become without moral growth, while Pearl reveals Brian's capacity for selfless love. The temporary nature of these characters also allows the show to explore darker or more complex themes without committing to long-term consequences. Evil Stewie can be genuinely threatening because he'll be gone by episode's end. Natalia can have a mysterious, violent past because she won't stick around long enough to require detailed explanation. These characters often represent roads not taken or alternative possibilities for the main cast. Boston Stewie shows what Stewie might have become under different circumstances, while New Brian represents an idealized version of pet ownership that proves ultimately unsatisfying. They serve as mirrors that reflect both the strengths and limitations of our familiar characters. The emotional impact of these one-episode appearances often exceeds that of recurring characters precisely because of their brevity. We know from the beginning that these relationships are temporary, which intensifies their emotional resonance. Pearl's death feels more poignant because we know this is her only chance to find happiness. The variety among these characters also demonstrates Family Guy's versatility in handling different genres and tones. Evil Stewie brings horror elements, Natalia introduces action thriller conventions, while Pearl provides genuine romantic drama. Each character pushes the show in directions it might not normally explore. Their absence from subsequent episodes often feels appropriate rather than wasteful. Evil Stewie's death resolves Stewie's identity crisis. Boston Stewie's adoption provides closure to his abandonment issues, and Pearl's passing gives her story natural completion. Some stories are better told once and concluded definitively than drawn out across multiple episodes. The craft involved in creating memorable characters who appear for just 22 minutes demonstrates sophisticated storytelling techniques. Each character must establish personality, motivation, and emotional stakes quickly while serving the episode's larger themes. They can't rely on audience familiarity or extended development time. These one-off appearances also serve as testing grounds for ideas and character types that might not work in longer forms. They allow writers to experiment with extreme personalities or unusual situations without committing to extended story arcs. Some concepts work better as brief encounters than sustained relationships. The legacy of these characters extends beyond their individual episodes through fan discussions, references, and speculation about what might have happened if they'd returned. They become part of Family Guy mythology despite their limited screen time, proving that memorable characterization doesn't require extended exposure. Looking at these characters collectively reveals patterns in how Family Guy approaches temporary relationships and their impact on the main cast. They often serve as catalysts for character growth or self-reflection, forcing main characters to confront aspects of themselves they might otherwise avoid examining. The show's willingness to create fully realized characters for single episodes demonstrates respect for both the medium and the audience. Rather than relying solely on familiar faces and established relationships, these episodes invest in new possibilities and fresh dynamics. Whether serving as dark reflections, unlikely allies, or brief loves, these one-time characters prove that meaningful storytelling doesn't require extended time frames. Sometimes the most powerful relationships are those that burn brightly and briefly, leaving permanent impressions on both characters and viewers long after they've disappeared from our screens.
You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, scrolling through endless videos, trying to find something that'll help you drift off to sleep? Most people go for rain sounds or meditation videos, but there's this weird corner of the internet that's discovered something completely unexpected: Family Guy lore videos. And honestly, it makes perfect sense once you think about it. Picture this: Peter Griffin's bumbling voice rambling about some ridiculous backstory while you slowly fade into dreamland. It's like having that one friend who tells really long, meandering stories that somehow become the perfect background noise for sleep. But here's the thing: Family Guy isn't just random jokes and cutaway gags. There's actually this incredibly deep, twisted universe hiding beneath all the chaos, and when you start exploring it at bedtime, something magical happens. Tonight, we're diving into the strangest, most soothing rabbit hole on YouTube. We're talking about Family Guy lore that's specifically designed to help you sleep. And trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll understand why millions of people are choosing Stewie's time travel adventures over counting sheep. Let's start with why this works so well. Your brain needs something engaging enough to distract from racing thoughts, but not so stimulating that it keeps you awake. Family Guy lore hits this sweet spot perfectly. The familiar voices create a sense of comfort, like having old friends nearby. The storylines are complex enough to occupy your mind, but delivered in that laid-back, conversational tone that naturally slows your heart rate. The beauty of Family Guy as sleep content lies in its structure. Unlike other shows that build tension toward climactic moments, Family Guy operates on this weird, episodic flow where nothing is too serious or urgent. Even when Peter is destroying the town or Stewie is plotting world domination, there's this underlying absurdity that signals to your brain that everything is okay. It's chaos, but comfortable chaos. One of the most popular sleep topics is Stewie's time travel timeline. Now, if you've watched the show casually, you might think Stewie's time adventures are just random episodes. But when you dig deeper, there's this incredibly complex web of cause and effect that spans decades. Stewie has literally shaped the Griffin family history in ways most viewers never realize. Think about it. In one timeline, Stewie prevents his own birth, which creates this paradox where he exists but shouldn't. In another, he saves his father's life, completely altering the family dynamic. These aren't just throwaway episodes. They're building blocks of an intricate multiverse where every action ripples through time. And when someone narrates this in a gentle, sleepy voice while you're tucked in bed, it becomes this dreamy exploration of cause and effect that naturally leads your mind into sleep. The time travel lore gets even more interesting when you consider Stewie's relationship with Brian. Their adventures through different eras reveal hidden layers of both characters. Brian isn't just the family dog who talks. He's this tortured intellectual who's lived through multiple timelines, sometimes remembering previous versions of events, sometimes completely oblivious. The complexity of their friendship across different realities becomes this beautiful, melancholy meditation on friendship and loyalty. What makes this perfect for sleep is how these time travel stories often end with everything returning to normal, or at least a version of normal. There's no real stakes because the show's format demands that the status quo be maintained. Your subconscious picks up on this pattern and relaxes, knowing that no matter how wild the adventure gets, the Griffin family will be okay by morning. Another incredibly soothing topic is the hidden depth of Peter Griffin's character. On the surface, he's just this obnoxious, immature father figure. But when you start examining his backstory, there's surprising emotional complexity. Peter's relationship with his own father, Francis, reveals layers of abandonment issues and the desperate need for approval that drives much of his behavior. The Catholic guilt that shapes Peter's worldview, his struggles with identity, his genuine love for his family despite constantly endangering them, all of this creates this rich psychological portrait. When narrated as bedtime content, Peter's flaws become almost endearing. He's not a bad person, he's just deeply human in the most ridiculous possible way. The show has quietly built this mythology around Peter's various jobs and failures. From working at the brewery to his brief stint as a country music star, each career represents a different aspect of the American dream gone wrong. But instead of being depressing, it's oddly comforting. Peter always bounces back, always finds something new to be enthusiastic about. His resilience becomes this gentle reminder that failure isn't permanent, that there's always another chance to mess things up in new and interesting ways. Lois Griffin's background provides another rich vein of sleep-friendly lore. Her wealthy upbringing, her musical talents, her complicated relationship with her parents, all of this creates this fascinating contrast with her current life. She chose chaos over comfort, love over luxury. When explored in that drowsy, contemplative tone that characterizes good sleep content, Lois becomes this complex figure who represents the compromises we all make for love. The show has revealed that Lois has this incredibly patient, almost saint-like quality that allows her to tolerate Peter's behavior. But occasionally, we see cracks in this facade, moments where her true feelings break through. These glimpses of Lois's inner life become fascinating character studies when presented as gentle bedtime analysis. Meg Griffin represents something even more interesting in the show's mythology. She's the perpetual outsider, the family member who never quite fits in. But when you examine her character closely, she's often the most sensible person in the room. Her isolation isn't really about her being unlikable. It's about her being different, more grounded than the rest of her chaotic family. The psychological dynamics of how the Griffin family treats Meg reveal uncomfortable truths about family structures and social hierarchies. But when explored as sleep content, these observations become philosophical musings rather than harsh critiques. Meg's resilience in the face of constant rejection becomes almost inspiring, a quiet testament to the strength of people who don't fit conventional molds. Chris Griffin's journey through adolescence provides another layer of gentle complexity. His artistic talents, his kind heart, his struggles with self-image, all of this unfolds against the backdrop of typical teenage challenges, amplified by his family's dysfunction. Chris represents hope in the Griffin universe, the possibility that the next generation might break free from destructive patterns. The show has developed this subtle running theme about Chris's potential. He's genuinely talented, genuinely caring, but constantly undermined by his environment. When narrated as bedtime content, Chris's story becomes this quiet meditation on nurture versus nature, on how children can maintain their essential goodness despite chaotic circumstances. Brian Griffin deserves special attention because he's arguably the most complex character in the entire series. He's an intellectual trapped in a dog's body, an artist struggling with mediocrity, a liberal idealist living in a conservative household. His pretensions and failures make him simultaneously the most relatable and most frustrating character. Brian's writing career, his romantic relationships, his drinking problem, his philosophical debates with Stewie, all of this creates this rich tapestry of middle-aged disappointment wrapped in surreal comedy. When presented as sleep content, Brian's struggles become universal human experiences filtered through the lens of absurdity. The relationship between Brian and Stewie forms the emotional core of many episodes, and their dynamic has evolved significantly over the show's long run. Early episodes portrayed them as adversaries, but they've developed into this unusual friendship between two intellectuals who understand each other's isolation within the Griffin household. Their conversations, whether they're traveling through time or just sitting in the living room, often touch on profound themes of mortality, purpose, and connection. When these moments are compiled and narrated as bedtime content, they become these surprisingly deep philosophical discussions that naturally lead the mind toward contemplative rest. The supporting characters in Family Guy have developed their own rich backstories that provide endless material for sleep-friendly content. Glenn Quagmire, despite his obvious character flaws, has this complex history as a pilot and adventurer. His relationship with his father, his military service, his various romantic entanglements, all of this creates this surprisingly detailed character study. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the show created interesting continuity questions that lore enthusiasts love to explore. The dynamics of the friend group, how relationships change over time, how people grow apart and come back together, these themes resonate on a deeper level when explored in that gentle, bedtime storytelling style. Joe Swanson's backstory as a police officer and his adjustment to life in a wheelchair provides material for surprisingly touching character exploration. his determination, his relationship with his family, his role as the moral center of Peter's friend group. All of this unfolds into rich character development that works beautifully as sleep content. The world building in Family Guy extends beyond the main characters to include the town of Quahog itself, the recurring locations, the background characters who appear across multiple episodes, the local politics and social dynamics. All of this creates a lived-in universe that feels surprisingly real despite its cartoon absurdity. The show has developed this consistent internal logic about how Quahog operates, from the local government to the business community to the social hierarchies. When explored as lore content, these details create this comforting sense of a complete world where everything has its place, even if that place is completely ridiculous. Family Guy's relationship with pop culture provides another fascinating avenue for sleep-friendly exploration. The show's countless references and parodies create this massive web of connections to movies, TV shows, music, and historical events. Tracing these references becomes like a gentle intellectual exercise that occupies the mind without overstimulating it. The cultural commentary embedded in these references often reveals surprising insight about American society, entertainment, and human nature. When presented as bedtime analysis, these observations become thoughtful cultural criticism delivered in the most relaxed possible format. The show's approach to continuity creates interesting puzzles for lore enthusiasts. Some episodes clearly exist in the same universe, building on previous events and character development. Others seem to exist in isolation, resetting everything back to a baseline. Understanding which episodes connect and which stand alone becomes this gentle mental exercise, perfect for bedtime. This flexible approach to continuity actually enhances the show's value as sleep content. Unlike serialized dramas where missing details might leave you confused, Family Guy's episodic nature means you can drift in and out of consciousness without losing the thread of what's happening. The animation style and visual storytelling in Family Guy contribute to its effectiveness as sleep content. The character designs are simple and comforting. The color palette is warm and familiar, and the pacing of visual jokes follows predictable patterns. Your brain learns to anticipate the rhythm of the show, which naturally promotes relaxation. The voice acting deserves special mention because the performers have developed these characters over decades. The familiarity of these voices creates an immediate sense of comfort and security. Seth MacFarlane's multiple character voices, Alex Borstein as Lois, Mila Kunis as Meg, each voice becomes like a comfortable presence in your bedroom. The musical elements in Family Guy add another layer of sleep-friendly content. The show frequently features elaborate musical numbers that range from Broadway-style productions to simple character songs. These musical interludes often reveal character depths and emotions that regular dialogue might not capture. When compiled as sleep content, these musical moments become like gentle lullabies that showcase different aspects of the characters' personalities. Conway Twitty performances, Stewie's show tunes, Peter's various musical adventures, all of this creates a diverse soundtrack for drifting off to sleep. The show's exploration of family dynamics provides universal themes that resonate regardless of the absurd context. The Griffin family, despite their dysfunction, genuinely cares about each other. Their conflicts and reconciliations follow familiar patterns that most viewers can relate to from their own family experiences. When examined as bedtime content, these family relationships become comforting reminders of the complexity and resilience of human connections. Even when Peter does something incredibly selfish or Stewie plots against his mother, the underlying love and loyalty always reassert themselves. The meta-humor in Family Guy creates another interesting layer for lore exploration. The show frequently acknowledges its own existence as a television program, breaking the fourth wall and commenting on its own production. These moments create this playful relationship between the show and its audience that enhances its value as comfort viewing. Understanding the real-world context behind certain episodes and jokes adds depth to the viewing experience without requiring intense concentration. The show's commentary on television, animation, and entertainment industry becomes gentle insider knowledge that enhances appreciation without demanding active analysis. The evolution of Family Guy over its many seasons provides rich material for comparative analysis. Early episodes had different character dynamics, different humor styles, and different production values. Tracing how the show has changed and developed becomes like following the growth of old friends. This long-term perspective on the series creates a sense of history and continuity that enhances its comfort value. You're not just watching random episodes. You're participating in this ongoing story that has unfolded over decades of real time. The fan community around Family Guy has developed its own theories and interpretations that add layers of meaning to seemingly simple episodes. These fan theories become part of the show's extended lore, creating additional content for exploration and discussion. When presented as bedtime content, these fan interpretations and theories become like bedtime stories shared among friends. They're speculative and playful rather than definitive, which makes them perfect for that drowsy state between wakefulness and sleep. The cultural impact of Family Guy extends beyond entertainment into social commentary and cultural criticism. The show has influenced animation, humor, and television production in measurable ways. Understanding this broader impact adds depth to individual episodes without requiring intense focus. This cultural context becomes another gentle layer of analysis that enhances the viewing experience. You're not just watching cartoons, you're experiencing a significant piece of contemporary American culture that has shaped entertainment and comedy. The merchandising and spin-off content around Family Guy creates additional universe expansion that lore enthusiasts love to explore. Video games, books, merchandise, and related media all contribute to the overall Griffin family mythology. These extensions of the core show become like supplementary reading that enhances understanding without being essential. They're bonus content that rewards dedicated fans while remaining accessible to casual viewers. So there you have it, the surprisingly deep and genuinely soothing world of Family Guy lore designed specifically for sleep. What started as a simple animated comedy has evolved into this rich, complex universe filled with character development, cultural commentary, and surprisingly profound themes about family, friendship, and human nature. The next time you're lying awake at 3 in the morning, scrolling through endless content options, remember that sometimes the most unexpected choices make the best bedtime companions. Peter Griffin's chaotic adventures and Stewie's time travel paradoxes might just be exactly what your brain needs to finally relax and drift off into peaceful sleep. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the multiverse of Family Guy, everything always works out in the end, which is exactly the kind of reassurance we all need before closing our eyes for the night.
Have you ever wondered why Meg Griffin is treated so terribly by her own family? What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Family Guy forever. I'm talking about hidden lore, deleted scenes, and creator secrets that explain everything about the most hated character on television. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Meg the same way again. But before we dive into these shocking revelations, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Peter literally abuse his daughter and just laughed it off? How many times have you seen Lois completely ignore Meg's cries for help? What if I told you there's a disturbing reason behind all of this, and it's way darker than you think? Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Meg Griffin wasn't always supposed to be the punching bag of the Griffin family. In the original concept art and early story treatments, Meg was designed to be the voice of reason, the straight man character who would call out the family's absurd behavior. She was meant to be relatable, intelligent, and the character viewers would connect with most. But something changed during production that transformed her into the most abused character in animated television history. The transformation of Meg Griffin began with a simple creative decision that snowballed into something much more sinister. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team discovered that having Meg be the target of jokes created an easy comedic formula. Need a quick laugh? Have someone insult Meg. Running short on time? Make Meg the butt of a cruel joke. What started as occasional comic relief became systematic psychological torture disguised as family entertainment. Here's where it gets really disturbing. The writers didn't just randomly choose Meg to be the family scapegoat. They specifically crafted her character to represent every teenage girl who feels invisible, unloved, and rejected by their family. Think about it. Meg's experiences mirror the real struggles of millions of teenagers who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The show takes these genuine feelings of adolescent pain and turns them into punchlines for adult entertainment. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Lacey Chabert, the original voice of Meg, left the show after just one season? The official reason given was scheduling conflicts, but industry insiders tell a different story. Chabert reportedly became uncomfortable with the increasingly cruel direction of Meg's character. She allegedly expressed concerns about the psychological implications of voicing a character who suffered such relentless abuse, even in a cartoon format. When Mila Kunis took over the role, she brought a different energy to Meg, but the character's treatment only got worse. The writers seemed to interpret Kunis's stronger vocal presence as permission to heap even more abuse on Meg. It's as if they felt they needed to work harder to break down this version of the character, leading to increasingly disturbing storylines and more brutal family dynamics. Let's talk about the episode that was so controversial it was partially rewritten before airing. In the original version of Barely Legal, Meg's obsession with Brian was portrayed much more sympathetically. The initial script showed Meg as a lonely teenager desperately seeking any form of affection, with Brian genuinely caring about her well-being. But the network demanded changes, wanting more comedic moments at Meg's expense. The final version transformed Meg's legitimate emotional needs into creepy stalker behavior, making her the villain of her own story. Here's something that will make your skin crawl. The show's writers have admitted in interviews that they use Meg as a testing ground for how far they can push controversial content. If a joke about domestic abuse, mental illness, or teenage depression doesn't work with other characters, they try it with Meg first. She's literally a guinea pig for the most disturbing content the show produces. The reasoning? If viewers are already conditioned to see Meg as deserving of mistreatment, they're less likely to object to increasingly dark humor. The psychological profile of Meg Griffin reveals something truly heartbreaking. She exhibits classic symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her desperate attempts to fit in, her willingness to endure abuse for even momentary acceptance, and her complete lack of self-worth all point to a character who has been systematically broken down by years of family trauma. The show presents this as comedy, but it's actually a textbook case study of emotional and psychological abuse. But here's where the lore gets really twisted. There's an unaired episode from Season 3 that was deemed too dark for broadcast. In this episode, titled Meg's Breaking Point, the character finally snaps and confronts her family about their treatment of her. The episode was fully animated and voiced before being pulled from the schedule. According to leaked production notes, the episode ended with Meg attempting to leave the family permanently, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by a manipulative speech from Peter about how the family needs her to abuse. The censored content doesn't stop there. Multiple episodes have had scenes removed that showed the long-term psychological effects of the family's treatment of Meg. These deleted scenes included Meg self-harming, having panic attacks, and showing signs of dissociation during family interactions. The network apparently felt these realistic consequences of abuse were too heavy for a comedy show, but they were perfectly fine with the abuse itself continuing episode after episode. Let's examine the most disturbing aspect of Meg's character development. Over the years, she's been conditioned to believe she deserves the mistreatment she receives. This is called learned helplessness, a psychological phenomenon where abuse victims begin to accept their situation as normal and stop trying to escape or improve their circumstances. The show has documented this process in real time, showing viewers exactly how psychological abuse breaks down a person's will to resist. Family Guy's treatment of Meg becomes even more disturbing when you consider the show's massive influence on popular culture. Millions of viewers, including impressionable teenagers, watch this show and learn that it's acceptable and even funny to systematically torment family members who are perceived as different or unpopular. The show has normalized family dysfunction to a degree that's genuinely concerning for child psychologists and family therapists. The voice acting reveals another layer of this disturbing lore. Mila Kunis has admitted in interviews that voicing Meg's more heartbreaking moments genuinely affects her emotionally. She's described having to take breaks during recording sessions when Meg's dialogue becomes too realistic in its portrayal of despair and hopelessness. The fact that professional voice actors struggle with this content should tell us something about how genuinely dark it really is. There's also the hidden symbolism in Meg's character design that most viewers never notice. Her pink beanie isn't just a fashion choice. It's meant to represent her attempt to hide and protect herself from the world. Her oversized clothes are armor against judgment and criticism. Even her glasses represent her desire to see the world clearly, while feeling that the world refuses to see her at all. Every aspect of her appearance tells the story of someone trying to disappear. The show's international versions reveal even more disturbing lore about Meg. In several countries, episodes featuring extreme Meg abuse have been edited or banned entirely. Some international broadcasters have added content warnings specifically for Meg-centric episodes, treating them as potentially harmful content rather than simple comedy. This raises serious questions about why American audiences are considered more accepting of this type of content. Here's something that will shock you about the show's merchandise and marketing. Despite being a main character, Meg is systematically excluded from most Family Guy promotional materials. Official merchandise featuring the Griffin family often leaves Meg out entirely, or places her in the background. This marketing strategy mirrors the character's treatment in the show itself, making her invisible even in promotional contexts. The fan community's relationship with Meg reveals the character's true cultural impact. While most characters have dedicated fan bases, Meg's fans are primarily people who identify with feeling like family outcasts themselves. The character has become an unintentional symbol for anyone who's ever felt unloved, unwanted, or systematically mistreated by those who should care for them most. This wasn't the creator's intention, but it's become Meg's most significant cultural legacy. Recent seasons have included subtle hints that the writers are beginning to recognize the problematic nature of Meg's treatment. There have been episodes where her family's behavior toward her is called out by other characters, and moments where Meg shows unexpected strength and self-respect. However, these moments are always followed by a return to the status quo, suggesting that the show is trapped by its own established dynamics. The most disturbing piece of Family Guy lore involving Meg comes from a writer's room story that was leaked several years ago. During the creation of an episode focused on Meg's birthday, the writing staff apparently spent an entire day brainstorming ways to make her special day as miserable as possible. The goal wasn't comedy. It was seeing how creatively they could torture the characters psychologically while maintaining the show's tone. This reveals a level of systematic cruelty in the creative process that goes far beyond simple comedic writing. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Meg Griffin is what she represents in terms of the show's larger themes. Family Guy isn't actually a show about a dysfunctional family learning to love each other despite their flaws. It's a show about how families can systematically destroy their most vulnerable members while convincing themselves and others that it's all harmless fun. Meg is the canary in the coal mine, the character whose treatment reveals the true darkness lurking beneath the show's comedic surface. The psychological research that's been conducted on Family Guy's impact specifically cites Meg's treatment as potentially harmful to viewers who identify with her character. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to this type of normalized family abuse can actually affect how viewers perceive their own family dynamics. Young people who see themselves in Meg might begin to accept similar treatment in their own lives as normal or deserved. What makes this even more concerning is the show's longevity and cultural penetration. Meg Griffin has been suffering this abuse for over 2 decades, across hundreds of episodes, reaching billions of viewers worldwide. The character has become one of television's most recognizable symbols of systematic family scapegoating, and that influence extends far beyond entertainment into real social attitudes about family dynamics and acceptable behavior. The voice direction for Meg's character provides another window into how deliberately her suffering is crafted. Voice directors reportedly give specific instructions to emphasize Meg's pain, disappointment, and desperation in ways that make these emotions more pronounced and uncomfortable. The goal isn't just to make her a comedic target, but to make her suffering feel authentic enough to create a specific type of uncomfortable humor that some viewers apparently find entertaining. Industry insiders have revealed that several guest stars have refused to participate in episodes that focused heavily on Meg's mistreatment. Some notable actors and comedians have reportedly declined guest appearances specifically because they were uncomfortable contributing to storylines that portrayed systematic family abuse as comedic entertainment. This behind-the-scenes resistance suggests that even entertainment professionals recognize something disturbing about Meg's treatment. The international psychological community has actually used Family Guy, and specifically Meg's character arc, as a case study in how popular media can normalize abuse dynamics. The show is frequently cited in academic papers about media influence on social attitudes toward family violence and psychological abuse. Meg Griffin has become an unintentional but powerful example of how entertainment can shape cultural attitudes toward vulnerable populations. Here's the most disturbing realization of all. The systematic abuse of Meg Griffin isn't just a byproduct of lazy comedy writing or poor character development. It's a carefully maintained dynamic that serves a specific function in the show's structure. Meg exists to absorb all the darkness that would otherwise make the other characters completely unlikable. She's a lightning rod for cruelty, allowing Peter, Lois, and the others to commit terrible acts, while still being positioned as the protagonists viewers should root for. The merchandising data reveals something equally troubling about how the character is perceived by the show's marketing department. Internal documents from licensing deals show that Meg-focused products consistently underperform compared to other characters, leading to a systematic exclusion from product lines. This creates a feedback loop where the character's treatment in the show influences her commercial viability, which then influences how she's treated in future episodes. Family Guy's treatment of Meg Griffin represents something much darker than simple comedy, or even typical dysfunctional family dynamics. It's a systematic portrayal of how families can destroy their most vulnerable members while maintaining a facade of normalcy and even affection. The show has documented this process across hundreds of episodes, creating what may be television's most comprehensive depiction of long-term psychological abuse, disguised as entertainment. The character of Meg Griffin started as a typical teenage daughter character, but evolved into something much more disturbing. She's become a symbol of how systematic mistreatment can break down a person's sense of self-worth and hope. The show's writers have created a character whose primary function is to suffer, and they've done it with such consistency and creativity that it reveals something genuinely troubling about how our culture views acceptable targets for cruelty and abuse. So the next time you watch Family Guy and see Meg being mistreated by her family, remember that you're not just watching a simple cartoon comedy. You're witnessing the most comprehensive portrayal of systematic family abuse ever broadcast as entertainment. And the disturbing lore behind this character reveals truths about our culture that are far more unsettling than anything you'll see in a typical horror movie. The real question isn't why Meg is treated so badly, but why millions of viewers have been conditioned to find that treatment entertaining rather than horrifying.
Welcome back, night owls and daydreamers. Tonight we're diving deep into the chaotic world of Quahog with some fascinating Family Guy facts that'll have you drifting off to sleep with a smile. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the Griffin family madness, these relaxing tidbits about one of animation's most controversial shows will guide you gently into dreamland. Let's start our journey back to 1999, when Family Guy first graced television screens. The show almost never happened at all. Creator Seth MacFarlane was working as a writer and animator for Hanna-Barbera when he created two animated shorts called The Life of Larry and Larry and Steve. These featured a man and his talking dog, which would eventually evolve into Peter and Brian Griffin. Fox executives were so impressed with MacFarlane's work that they gave him an unprecedented deal for someone so young, making him the youngest person ever to create a primetime series for the network at just 24 years old. The original pilot episode had a much smaller budget than later episodes, which is why the animation looks noticeably different. The Griffin house interior was actually based on the house from another famous animated family, but with some creative liberties taken. MacFarlane has mentioned that he wanted the show to feel lived in and realistic, despite all the absurd situations the family would find themselves in. Speaking of the Griffin family, each character was carefully designed to represent different aspects of the American family dynamic. Peter Griffin, the bumbling patriarch, was inspired by MacFarlane's own father and various blue-collar workers he'd observed growing up in Connecticut. His distinctive laugh wasn't originally planned. It just happened naturally during recording sessions, and the creators decided to keep it because it felt so authentic to the character. Lois Griffin underwent several design changes before settling on her final appearance. Originally, she was going to have a completely different personality, more stern and less patient with her family's antics. The writers quickly realized that having someone slightly more grounded would make the show's more outrageous moments feel more believable. Her background as a wealthy heiress was added later to explain how the family could afford their lifestyle despite Peter's various job changes and general incompetence. The character of Meg started out very differently than how fans know her today. In the early seasons, she was treated more like a regular teenage daughter dealing with typical adolescent problems. The running joke of the entire family treating her terribly wasn't established until later seasons. This shift reflected the show's overall evolution toward more extreme and absurd humor over time. Chris Griffin was originally going to be the smart one in the family, but the writers felt this would create too much overlap with Brian's role as the voice of reason. Instead, they made him dim-witted but good-hearted, which created better comedic opportunities and family dynamics. His voice actor actually had to learn to make his voice crack consistently to maintain the character's adolescent sound as the show progressed through multiple seasons. Stewie Griffin is perhaps the most complex character in terms of development. His evil, genius baby persona was inspired by various movie villains, but his sophisticated vocabulary and adult concerns created an interesting contradiction that the writers loved exploring. The ambiguity around his sexual orientation was intentional from early on, with MacFarlane wanting to create a character that defied easy categorization. The family dog Brian started as a relatively simple character, but evolved into something much more complex. He was meant to be the straight man to the family's chaos, offering occasional wisdom and commentary. His human-like behavior was the central joke, a dog who acted more civilized than his human family members. The character served as MacFarlane's voice in many episodes, expressing his own political views and social commentary through Brian's dialogue and actions. Family Guy's animation style was heavily influenced by classic cartoons, but with modern sensibilities. The character designs were kept relatively simple to allow for faster animation production, but the backgrounds were often incredibly detailed. The color palette was specifically chosen to feel warm and inviting, like a real family home, which contrasted nicely with the show's often chaotic storylines. The show's famous cutaway gags weren't originally planned as a major feature. They started as occasional diversions but became more frequent when the writers realized how much creative freedom they provided. These sequences allowed the show to explore completely unrelated scenarios and parody different time periods, movies, and cultural phenomena without being constrained by the main plot. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how much the voice actors contribute to their characters' development. Many of the show's funniest moments came from improvisation during recording sessions. The actors would often suggest alternative line readings or add physical comedy that would then be animated to match their performance. The show's musical numbers weren't part of the original concept, but became increasingly important as the series progressed. MacFarlane's background in musical theater and his love of classic show tunes influenced many of these sequences. The elaborate production numbers often required months of preparation and coordination between the animation, music, and voice departments. Family Guy's relationship with censorship has been complicated throughout its run. The show has pushed boundaries since its inception, but network standards have evolved over the years. Many episodes have alternate versions with different jokes or sequences depending on when and where they're broadcast. This has created an interesting archive of content that varies significantly across different platforms and time periods. The series has featured an incredible array of celebrity guest stars over the years, many of whom were fans of the show before appearing on it. Some celebrities have become recurring characters, while others made single appearances that became memorable moments for fans. The show's writers often write specific roles with particular actors in mind, creating unique opportunities for both established and emerging performers. Behind the scenes, Family Guy's production schedule is incredibly demanding. Each episode takes months to complete, from initial script to final animation. The process involves dozens of artists, writers, and technicians working in coordination. Despite this complexity, the show has maintained a remarkably consistent output for over 2 decades. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond television. Family Guy references and quotes have become part of everyday conversation for many fans. The show's influence can be seen in countless other animated series that followed, many of which adopted similar humor styles and narrative structures. Family Guy's cancellation and subsequent revival is one of television's most interesting stories. After being canceled twice, the show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on cable networks. This proved that there was still a significant audience for the show's particular brand of humor, leading to its eventual return to primetime television. The evolution of animation technology has dramatically changed how Family Guy is produced. Early seasons required hand-drawn animation cells, while modern episodes are created entirely digitally. This technological shift has allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but some fans prefer the slightly rougher aesthetic of the earlier seasons. Family Guy's international success has led to numerous international versions and adaptations. Different countries have created their own versions of the show with local characters and cultural references. These adaptations provide fascinating insights into how humor translates across different cultures and societies. The show's merchandise empire extends into virtually every category imaginable. From clothing and toys to video games and books, Family Guy has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has helped fund the show's continued production and allowed for increasingly ambitious episodes and special events. Family Guy's writing process involves a large team of contributors working collaboratively. Story ideas can come from anywhere, and the show's writer's room is known for its freewheeling creative atmosphere. Many of the show's most memorable episodes began as simple throwaway comments that evolved into full storylines through group brainstorming sessions. The show's holiday episodes have, quote, become annual traditions for many families. These special episodes often feature elaborate musical numbers and heartwarming moments that contrast with the show's typically irreverent tone. The Christmas episodes in particular have become comfort viewing for many fans during the holiday season. Family Guy's relationship with social media has evolved significantly over the years. The show's official accounts regularly share behind-the-scenes content, and the writers often interact directly with fans online. This direct connection between creators and audience has influenced how episodes are developed and promoted. The series has tackled numerous social and political issues throughout its run, often generating significant discussion and sometimes controversy. These episodes demonstrate the show's willingness to engage with serious topics while maintaining its comedic perspective. The balance between entertainment and commentary has been a defining characteristic of the series. Family Guy's sound design is incredibly detailed, with each episode featuring hundreds of individual sound effects and musical cues. The show's audio team works closely with the animation department to ensure that every visual gag is supported by appropriate sound. This attention to audio detail helps create the show's distinctive atmosphere. The series has spawned several spin-offs and related projects over the years. These additional shows have allowed the creators to explore different aspects of the Family Guy universe and experiment with new storytelling approaches. Some have been more successful than others, but all have contributed to the overall Family Guy mythology. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing can be seen in numerous other television shows and movies. The show's particular style of rapid-fire jokes and pop culture references has become a template that many other creators have adapted and modified for their own projects. The show's live performances and special events have created unique opportunities for fans to experience Family Guy in different contexts. These events often feature the voice actors performing in character and provide insights into the creative process that aren't available through the regular episodes. Family Guy's educational impact, while perhaps unintentional, has been significant. Many viewers have discovered new music, learned historical facts, or been introduced to classic movies through the show's references and parodies. This accidental educational component has made the show valuable beyond pure entertainment. The series has maintained its relevance across multiple generations of viewers. Parents who watched the show when it first aired now watch it with their own children, creating shared cultural experiences that span decades. This intergenerational appeal has helped ensure the show's continued success. Family Guy's production team includes numerous talented artists who have gone on to create their own successful projects. The show has served as a training ground for many animators, writers, and voice actors who have used their experience to launch their own careers in entertainment. The show's approach to continuity is deliberately loose, allowing for creative freedom while occasionally referencing past events. This flexible approach to storytelling has enabled the writers to explore virtually any scenario without being constrained by previous episodes. Family Guy's relationship with its fan community is uniquely interactive. The show's creators regularly acknowledge fan theories and suggestions, sometimes incorporating them into actual episodes. This collaborative relationship between creators and audience has helped maintain the show's popularity over many years. As we drift towards sleep tonight, remember that Family Guy represents more than just animated comedy. It's a cultural phenomenon that has brought laughter to millions of viewers worldwide. The show's ability to evolve while maintaining its core identity demonstrates the power of creative persistence and the importance of connecting with audiences on multiple levels. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with the gentle chaos of Quahog, where anything is possible and laughter is always just around the corner. The Griffin family will be there waiting when you wake up, ready with new adventures and timeless humor that continues to entertain after all these years. What if I told you that behind the perfect housewife facade lies one of television's most twisted characters? The woman you think you know as the voice of reason in the Griffin household has actually murdered multiple people, cheated on her husband at least 12 times, and may have given birth to a child who isn't even his. This is the untold story of Lois Griffin, and trust me, it's darker than you ever imagined. Most people see Lois as the long-suffering wife who somehow tolerates Peter's antics while keeping their chaotic family together. But that's exactly what she wants you to think. The reality is that Lois Griffin has one of the most disturbing character arcs in animated television, filled with secrets that would make even the most hardened criminal blush. From her privileged upbringing to her descent into madness, every chapter of her life reveals new layers of dysfunction that will completely change how you see this seemingly innocent character. Let me take you back to where it all began. Lois wasn't always a Griffin. She was born Lois Pewterschmidt into one of the most powerful and dysfunctional families on the East Coast. Picture this: a sprawling mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, where money flowed like water, but emotional warmth was as rare as honest politicians. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, built an empire on ruthless business practices, while her mother, Babs, played the role of the perfect trophy wife, both too busy with their own ambitions to give their children the love they desperately needed. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. Lois had a brother named Patrick, and this family secret will haunt you. As a young child, Patrick witnessed something so traumatic involving his mother that it broke his mind completely. Carter's solution wasn't therapy or family healing. He had his own son shipped off to a mental institution and erased from family history like he never existed. This wasn't just neglect. This was calculated, emotional brutality that would set the tone for how this family handled problems, make them disappear. Growing up in this environment, Lois and her sister Carol developed completely different survival mechanisms. Carol became desperate for male attention, rushing into relationship after relationship, collecting divorces like trophies. By the time we meet her, she's been married and divorced 8 times. Each failed relationship a symptom of the emotional void their parents created. But Lois chose a different path: rebellion disguised as conformity. As a teenager, Lois discovered a passion for modeling. For once, she had found something that made her feel alive, something that was hers. But when a legitimate modeling contract was offered, Carter crushed her dreams without hesitation. His exact words were chilling. His daughter would not lower herself to such work. This wasn't parental protection. This was control, masked as concern for social status. And this moment planted the first seeds of the resentment that would later explode into her adult dysfunction. College became Lois's escape hatch, but instead of finding freedom, she found chaos. At Kent State University, she threw herself into everything her controlling father had forbidden. She partied with reckless abandon, broke every rule she could find, and made choices that would haunt her for decades. The most shocking of these was starring in an adult film, not for money or fame, but as the ultimate act of rebellion against her family's pristine image. Think about the psychology here. This wasn't some wild phase or momentary lapse in judgment. This was a young woman so damaged by emotional neglect and control that she was willing to do anything to feel like she had agency over her own life. The fact that she shared this secret so casually with a reporter she barely knew tells us everything about her desperate need for authenticity in a life built on lies and appearances. But the real bombshell comes when we examine how she met Peter Griffin. Here's where the story becomes almost too bizarre to believe. Peter wasn't some college boyfriend or family friend. He was literally hired as a pool boy to clean her family's estate. Picture the scene. The refined daughter of a billionaire family falls for a man whose greatest talent is making fart jokes. On the surface, it looks like a classic opposites attract romance. But dig deeper, and you'll see the psychological warfare at play. Lois choosing Peter wasn't love at first sight. It was the nuclear option in her war against her father's expectations. Carter had controlled every aspect of her life, from her career choices to her social circle. So she chose the one person guaranteed to horrify him, a working-class man with zero social graces and fewer brain cells. This wasn't romance. This was revenge, with wedding vows. When Carter discovered their relationship, his reaction was swift and brutal. He had Peter knocked, unconscious and dumped in the middle of the ocean like some kind of mob hit. But Peter survived, and here's where things get interesting. Carter then offered Peter $1 million to walk away forever. Peter's response reveals something crucial about their dynamic. He turned down the money, claiming Lois was worth more to him than cash. But his exact words were telling. He said she was worthless to him, which is why he loved her. This wasn't the romantic declaration it appeared to be. This was two damaged people finding each other through mutual dysfunction. Peter saw in Lois someone who wouldn't judge his failures because she was running from her own. Lois saw in Peter the ultimate weapon against her family's suffocating expectations. Their love story wasn't built on compatibility or shared values. It was built on shared rebellion against the lives they were supposed to live. The cracks in this foundation became obvious almost immediately. When they tried to start fresh, after college, they broke up. Lois got engaged to Tom Tucker, a much more logical choice that her family approved of. But Peter couldn't let go, not because of love, but because losing Lois meant losing his identity as the rebel who stole the rich girl. So he crashed her wedding in a desperate last-ditch effort to reclaim what he saw as his greatest achievement. What happened next reveals the true toxicity of their relationship. Lois was already pregnant with Meg when they eloped, which means their entire marriage was built on necessity rather than choice. She literally couldn't back out even if she wanted to. This detail reframes their entire relationship. Every fight, every moment of dysfunction, every terrible decision can be traced back to this moment when two people trapped themselves in a marriage neither really wanted. Parenthood didn't fix their problems. It amplified them exponentially. Their first instinct as new parents was to abandon Meg at a fire station. When that failed, they took her home to Spooner Street. But the damage was already done. This child represented everything wrong with their relationship. Unplanned, unwanted, and a constant reminder of the life neither had chosen. As more children arrived, Lois's parenting style became increasingly unhinged. With Meg, she started as a protective mother, but gradually became cruel and dismissive. The most heartbreaking example is when Meg pours her heart out, telling Lois she loves her, and Lois can't bring herself to say it back. This isn't just poor parenting. This is emotional abandonment that mirrors her own childhood trauma. But Meg isn't the only victim of Lois's maternal dysfunction. She's physically abused Stewie, getting so desperate for pills that she dunked his head in a toilet to retrieve one that fell in. She ran over him with her car and immediately tried to cover it up, rather than face the consequences. These aren't accidents or momentary lapses. They're patterns of, quote, behavior that reveals someone completely detached from normal parental instincts. Even with Chris, supposedly her favorite, she's done things that cross every line of appropriate motherly behavior. When rumors spread that he was involved with an attractive teacher, instead of shutting down the inappropriate speculation, she confirmed it herself. This isn't protective parenting. This is a woman so desperate for attention that she'll exploit her own children to get it. The drug addiction storyline reveals just how far Lois has fallen from her privileged upbringing. This isn't recreational use or social experimentation. This is full-blown addiction that turns her into a criminal. She starts dealing drugs, becomes a kleptomaniac, and eventually graduates to violent crime. The woman who grew up in mansions is now poisoning baristas and kidnapping innocent people to maintain her position as the best customer at a coffee shop. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Lois's character is her complete moral flexibility. She runs for mayor claiming to fight corruption, then immediately becomes as corrupt as the person she replaced. She allows oil companies to dump waste in the city's water supply for money. This isn't political compromise. This is selling out an entire community for personal gain. Her relationship with violence is equally troubling. She's admitted to killing multiple people, including a waitress on their honeymoon as part of some sick game with Peter. She traumatized Chris by revealing she'd killed someone with her car, then casually mentioned that all mothers have killed someone, as if murder was just another household chore. The pattern becomes clear when you look at her complete story. Every major decision in Lois's life has been driven by one of two motives: rebelling against her family's expectations, or covering up the consequences of previous rebellions. She chose Peter to spite her father. She had children because she was trapped. She became addicted to drugs to cope with her choices. She turned to crime to support her addictions. Each step led inevitably to the next in a downward spiral that shows no signs of stopping. Her infidelity adds another layer to this psychological profile. Lois hasn't just cheated on Peter occasionally. She's been systematically unfaithful throughout their entire marriage. She's had affairs with Bill Clinton, rock stars from the 80s, and even Peter's own half-brother. The most shocking revelation is her admission that Chris might not even be Peter's biological son, the result of an affair with actor Philip Seymour Hoffman. This isn't a woman struggling with temptation. This is someone who views marriage vows as suggestions rather than commitments. Her pattern of cheating reveals someone incapable of genuine intimacy, constantly seeking validation from new partners because she's never resolved the emotional damage from her childhood. The psychological implications become even more disturbing when you consider her relationships with Brian and Quagmire. Both men have been obsessed with her for years, and in alternate timelines, she's married both of them. This suggests that her appeal isn't based on genuine connection, but on some kind of emotional unavailability that draws damaged men to her like moths to a flame. Her bisexual tendencies, while potentially representing healthy sexual exploration, fit the same pattern. She kisses women impulsively, fantasizes about running away with female cashiers, and engages in passionate encounters with friends' wives. But these aren't expressions of genuine sexual identity. They're more rebellion, more ways to shock and transgress against social expectations. As Lois ages, the consequences of her choices begin catching up with her. By her 50th birthday, doctors are warning she might not survive much longer due to the physical toll of her lifestyle and the violence she's experienced. Stewie planted a time bomb in her uterus as an infant, and Chris nearly killed her during childbirth. These details aren't just dark humor. They're metaphors for how her own children have become weapons turned against her, the inevitable result of her toxic parenting. The future episodes show Lois and Peter still together in their retirement home. But this isn't a happy ending. It's two people too damaged and codependent to separate. even when they probably should. Their adult children push them into assisted living, suggesting that even as grown-ups, the Griffin kids can't wait to get their parents out of their lives. But here's what makes Lois truly fascinating as a character. She's not entirely unsympathetic. Every terrible thing she's done can be traced back to the emotional neglect and control she experienced as a child. Her father crushed her dreams and treated her like a possession. Her mother was absent and cold. Her brother was literally erased from family history when he became inconvenient. Is it any wonder she grew up incapable of healthy relationships or appropriate boundaries? The tragedy of Lois Griffin isn't that she became a terrible person. It's that she never had a real chance to become anything else. Every relationship in her life has been transactional or manipulative. She learned early that love comes with conditions and that people will abandon you if you become inconvenient. So she became someone who abandons others first, who cheats before being cheated on, who hurts before being hurt. Her criminal behavior isn't random chaos. It's the logical endpoint of a life spent learning that rules don't apply to people with money and power. Her father built an empire through ruthless business practices and made problems disappear through violence and money. Is it surprising that his daughter grew up thinking murder and corruption were just more extreme versions of normal problem solving? The drug addiction storyline reveals someone desperately trying to numb the pain of a life she never wanted. The cheating shows someone searching for connection she's never experienced. The violent outbursts demonstrate someone who learned early that force and manipulation get better results than honesty and vulnerability. Even her relationship with Peter, dysfunctional as it is, represents her attempt to break free from the toxic patterns of her childhood. She chose someone completely different from her father, someone who couldn't control or manipulate her through money or social pressure. The problem is that she chose someone equally damaged, someone whose emotional instability matched her own. The most disturbing aspect of Lois's story is how it reflects real-world patterns of generational trauma. Children who grow up in emotionally abusive environments often struggle to form healthy relationships as adults. They may seek out partners who replicate familiar patterns of dysfunction because chaos feels like home. They may become abusive parents themselves, not out of malice, but because they never learned healthy parenting models. Lois's story is a masterclass in how privilege can't protect children from emotional damage. All the money in the world couldn't give her what she really needed. Parents who loved her unconditionally and supported her dreams. Instead, she got parents who treated her like a business asset and a social accessory, valued only for how she reflected on their reputation. The brilliance of her character lies in how the show presents her as both victim and villain simultaneously. Yes, she's done terrible things that hurt innocent people. But understanding why she did them doesn't excuse the behavior. It explains how someone becomes capable of such actions. She's a cautionary tale about what happens when children don't receive the emotional foundation they need to become healthy adults. Her relationship with her own children reflects this cycle of dysfunction. She can't give them what she never received herself. Her inability to say "I love you" to Meg isn't just cruelty. It's the echo of parents who never said those words to her. Her physical abuse of Stewie mirrors the emotional violence she experienced growing up. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Lois's character is how normal she appears on the surface. She's articulate, intelligent, and socially skilled when she needs to be. She can play the role of the concerned mother, the devoted wife, the responsible citizen. This ability to present a functional facade while being completely broken inside makes her more dangerous than someone whose dysfunction is obvious. The show's genius lies in slowly revealing the depths of her damage over time. Early episodes presented her as the reasonable one, the moral center of the family. But as the series progressed, each new revelation stripped away another layer of that facade until we saw the broken person underneath. This isn't character assassination. It's archaeological excavation, uncovering the psychological damage that was always there but carefully hidden. Looking at Lois Griffin's complete story, we see a masterpiece of character development that illustrates how childhood trauma can echo through generations. She's not just a cartoon character making bad choices for laughs. She's a complex psychological portrait of someone whose entire life has been shaped by early emotional wounds that never healed. Her story serves as a dark mirror to the American dream, showing how wealth and privilege can create their own forms of destruction. The Pewterschmidt family had everything money could buy, but nothing that actually mattered. And their daughter grew up to become living proof that you can't buy emotional health or authentic human connection. The most disturbing realization about Lois Griffin is that she's not an anomaly. She's a recognizable type. We all know people who seem to have everything together on the surface, but whose personal lives are complete disasters. We see them in positions of power, making decisions that affect others while being completely incapable of managing their own emotional lives. Lois Griffin's entire story is a cautionary tale about the price of emotional neglect and the generational transmission of trauma. She started as a victim of her parents' dysfunction and became the architect of her children's future therapy bills. Her legacy isn't the crimes she's committed or the people she's hurt. It's the cycle of damage that will likely continue through her own children unless they find ways to break free from the patterns she's established. In the end, Lois Griffin represents one of television's most complex and disturbing character studies. She's simultaneously the victim of generational trauma and the perpetrator of new trauma, a woman whose entire life has been shaped by her unsuccessful attempts to escape the emotional prison her parents built around her childhood. Understanding her story doesn't excuse her actions, but it does explain how someone becomes capable of such systematic dysfunction while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. The brilliance of her character lies not in the shocking things she does, but in how those actions reflect deeper patterns of psychological damage that make perfect sense once you understand where she came from. She's not crazy. She's the logical product of her environment, which makes her story both more tragic and more terrifying than any random acts of villainy could ever be.